Welcome to Martechify, a community of marketing professionals interested in digital marketing, Martech, and AI. I'm your host, Ekaterina Konovalova, and I'm so excited to welcome today our leading SEO experts, Gareth Cunningham. He's the Director of Search Experience at ModUp, and Maurice White. He's a Senior SEO Strategist at ModUp. And I gathered the gentleman today because there's so much talk about changes in SEO, how AI shifted search, how now many people don't even land on the website and look at AI summaries. And I wanted to learn more about where marketers should focus their attention in 2026 and beyond. So welcome to our podcast and let's dive in. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, Gareth, maybe you can start us off and tell us your thoughts about how search is shifting and where do you think we should focus our attention in 2026?
An interesting topic. I think that if we look at it, kind of what the acronym was for SEO, search engine optimization, now we have generative. The only thing that's really changed is the letter within the acronym. I think one of the key things is important to remember is that if your foundational elements for SEO, historic or traditional SEO, aren't there, your generative search might not perform in the same way as you might be hearing on some of your favorite YouTube or TikTokers are kind of saying, making it sound very simple. I think that where we see kind of this evolution is that SEO is still important, but geo opens up a whole new universe of users. And I think that the data that we're seeing so far around the growth element for LLMs is kind of pointing us in a direction that SEOs need to still hold on to their craft, need to still be building that solid foundation, but at the same time too, they need to be looking to the horizon. As Sam Altman said the other day, the CFO of OpenAI said, we need to be on the cutting edge of the cutting edge every day. And as marketers, we need to be there too.
Yes. And Maurice, what do you see in your daily work? How is it shifting for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely shifting a bit because there's a lot more interest in being able to be found by generative AI searches and being found by the answer engines. What I can say is, I truly believe that having your authentic, helpful content leads you into that future. So as far as my changes is more mostly around the interest on how can we be able to optimize for these answer engines, for these generative AI searches. And the answer lies with having helpful content, being able to, increase your brand mentions out there. There are other tactical steps, but overall, without that helpful content, the future, you won't realize that future. So for me, really nothing really changes. It's just more focused on being able to help our clients understand the importance of a content strategy. You know what I mean? The importance of having a technically sound website. Because we're, with search experience, formerly SEO, right? We're really focused on your website and your digital presence within your website and how that communicate your brand message and, your products or services and how they're helpful for potential clients, how they resolve some sort of matter that they're facing, whether that's a cost matter, whether that's a technical issue, whether that's a constraint somewhere else. Your product or service is valuable to that person looking for it. So our job is to be able to communicate that in a non-branded way, right? So for us, sticking to, the basic fundamental of authentic, helpful content is where I see like the future continuing to grow. First is, a lot of people are creating AI content. They're leveraging AI to reduce their time, but it's also reducing quality. It's also reducing a lot of different things. You still need that human touch for your content. And I don't really want to get off track because I know you're asking me about the future of SEO, but the future of SEO was released like 5 or 6 years ago through various algorithm updates. You know what I mean? So it's just all about, like Gareth is saying, being on the cutting edge of the cutting edge, making sure that as a marketer, we provide helpful and reliable recommendations and consulting in order for our clients to achieve that visibility that they're looking for.
And Maurice brings up a very good point there. The kind of the shift within the industry, the marketing industry now for intent-based, answer-based content is something not new to us at Moda. We have been championing the need for clients to lean into content, because it's not, as everybody goes along their daily marketing journey, there's a lot of different things involved in it. You've design development, you've UX, you've branding, and they all have to fit that. There's a whole thing about form and function. As Marie said there, for the last probably 4 to 5 years, we have been really consulting with our clients around making sure that the content holds all of the where, what, how, when, and why, so that no question is left unanswered. And it just happened that the advent of AI came along, and that's what they're asking for too. So we've set a lot of just kind of what with our kind of our stance on our 3 pillars for how we typically tend to approach search, which would be, as Maurice just touched on, a content a structure that holds relevant search intent, a technically sound website with the correct tech stack in it, and then the authority then, which is what the search engines were kind of built on, passing authority from one page to another page. It seems now that the LLMs are kind of jumping on the bandwagon with that around brand search and citations, links to a degree. But there's a whole different fragrance to this geo now at the minute. But a lot of the nuts and bolts that we were doing for it, and as I said before, SEO, they're still very important, and they seem to be a thing that, as I say, them LLMs are leaning into and kind of looking for the signals from.
Yeah, and also just one thing to add there, because you previously asked me like what changes, as far as my day-to-day, work in search, and I was saying like nothing really changes on my side because we've been, practicing, and this is what I would say. What will change for some search marketers is working more closely with other marketing disciplines like development, web development, like the UX and UI team. You feel me? To be able to create an experience that not only follows best practices for those disciplines, but also incorporates search as the foundation. From on the technical side, making sure the information architecture is there, making sure you're able to add schema markup, making sure you're able to easily be able to add the metadata, page title, meta description, that the heading hierarchy follows best practices. Like there's a lot that goes into the development part for technical SEO. But then you take a look at creative with UX and UI, first starting with a sitemap to understand all of the information architecture, how all of the pages are going to be organized down to the on-page content structure. Then being able to translate that into wireframes that fit all of the tactics that are used for optimization. Clear heading, clear summary of the page, bulleted point content, cited sources, FAQ questions, easy to read, helpful content from an answer first perspective, right? But then not only working with those disciplines and also with paid media, like search, organic search and paid media are like hand in hand when we talk about search visibility. So already working with the paid search team, being able to understand the terms that they're going after, what they're looking at, and then being able to work together with them, including incorporating paid search landing pages within the taxonomy. So, but beyond the normal web development team, you also got to think about PR, increasing brand mentions within, the universe, so to speak, your digital universe, making sure that your brand messaging is all together. That's super important as well. Then working with other disciplines just to make sure that your strategic outlook for how you're handling all of your marketing decisions is in par with the trends and what's happening with the future. Because like you said, the tools are changing, the way people are searching are changing. And so you want to make sure that your team is able to work in unison to achieve that brand visibility from a organic and non-organic perspective, right? And what do you think about that, Gareth? Because
I think we can finish off the podcast, and I think you covered it all just there and that.
Well, I have a follow-up question because you mentioned that the content needs to be authentic and ideally not AI generated. So what are your thoughts on, and of course there are different tools like Humanizer AI that can make your AI generated text sound more human. So does it mean that search engines prioritize human written content over AI content. Can you share your thoughts on that?
I think it was probably about 8 or 9 months ago, there was a story broke on Twitter around somebody that had got ahead of this here. It was just whenever it wasn't ChatGPT that came out, it was another one, and they produced millions of pages of content, and it was all for AdSense. So they made a nice little killing in that there. But then Google came in and they then updated Google Webmaster Guidelines and said that anything to do with AI was permissible. They didn't give any kind of barometer to that. They just says it was okay to use AI for anything to do with content and anything to do with their algorithm. If you've been around Google for a long time, you can understand that sometimes Google doesn't give you all of the pieces of the puzzle. And what they typically tend to do is they allow the industry to move forward, specifically the SEO industry, because they don't get any revenue out of search. They only get revenue out of media. So it was how the algorithm was designed 10 places and then they put ads on top of it and started to monetize. But what we find is that the search engine increasingly is starting to retrofit and penalize brands for using nothing but AI. And it falls back into to a patent that they filed in 2005 called Author Rank, where if you remember back, they had G plus and they had it was like their kind of melee into the search or sorry to the social arena, and then they just killed it off. That was
Yes.
the understanding around the connection of an author, a connection of a real person. So what we're seeing here now is extremely important that whenever you produce a piece of content, that you have your author bio in there. It connects that part of what they have, the part of that patent that they had filed that they haven't really come out yet and said that they're using. But all of I always say that if it sounds like it, looks like it, smells like it probably is that. We would definitely guide our clients to not have just full on AI produce the content or really do much in terms of just end to end. You're always going to need that kind of human touch in the middle. So, for instance, right now we're developing Mollop's developing different tools for the industry around being able to kind of think intelligently around the brand and what they're saying, what they need based on the competition and kind of the vertical that they're in, and then producing an end-to-end product per page. But we're not just going to ever just push that out and just say that's it, completed, done. There's always going to be the likes of myself or Maurice or some of the other team members that are going to go through and make sure that everything clicks together in a way that actually makes sense, that can produce, not just results in terms of click through and time on page and stuff like that. There, we're looking for impact, and increasingly what we're finding is our clients are moving more towards what really does matter, which is the conversion, and the conversion could be a multiple different things.
And let me ask you a follow-up question. When we talked about, again, AI summary, in the olden times, pre-AI, people wanted to rank on the first page, and second page was less favorable, etc. And now people are competing for that top AI summary, and if your website is listed as one of these 3 or 5 sources, it's a big victory. You did mention that authentic content is a huge, basically it's your biggest asset, but it seems that it's even more competitive right now to get to that little space at the top. So how can brands increase their chances?
You can maybe, Maurice, go over how we did the historical SEO periodic table, which kind of laid out all of the evolution from I think it was 2003, 2002, and how that all changed till then. We had Geo. Maurice put together a periodic table to kind of start out a periodic table right now. That will evolve in the years to come. But Maurice, if you want to take a bit of time and go through that there and kind of where that kind of showed up, because it was a testament to our trial and kind of an R&D side, really.
Yeah, yeah, we can definitely talk about those ranking factors, but I mean, really, the generative AI periodic table is really all about what we were just talking about, working in unison with your marketing team to be able to expand your digital presence out there, your brand's digital presence via organic and non-organic marketing avenues, right? So, and coming back to what you were saying about being able to, first taking a step back to the AI content, Gareth hit it right on the nail. And I want to say, first of all, shout out to all the copywriters and content creators out there because you are very valuable to this process. As Gareth mentioned, trying to create 100% AI generated content and then pushing that out on your website will not be helpful for your audience, right? And there are several factors that play into that, such as product owners, content owners, people who own that piece of the business that are able to give you that information in order to create content that's helpful for your audience or your potential clients, right? So having that human touch and authenticity is super important in gaining those citations and working with your PR team and getting your authority out there. You know, it's almost like the reverse of backlinks, where a backlink will be a reference from an authoritative site back to your website that boosts your authority. Whereas these brand mentions and citations, or more and more people are talking about you and referencing you across your digital experience from social media to YouTube, to your website, everywhere. So it's really important that cohesiveness of working with your marketing team in order to increase overall visibility, because it's no longer just about organic search or paid media or branding or all of these different aspects siloed away. It's
Mm.
all about everybody working together. And that's where the geo periodic table came into place, because we take a look at different factors of where you currently stand in each of those buckets, like your content, like your technical, like your brand mentions, and other areas, in order to be able to say, let's be able to take a look at where you are now and measure that as we go along, because measurability of generative AI visibility is a mystery at the moment. And if anybody tells you they understand it, please don't believe that. There are several ways to kind of get an understanding of it, but no one has a direct line into any LLM to measure the data of the usage and the demographics of any of that. You can measure by citations. You can measure by increased visibility for keywords in AI mode. You can measure by engagement, traditional engagement metrics from your analytics systems, right? So there is no one magic bullet for measurement, but overall visibility, as Gareth mentioned, and at least what we focus on within an organic search, is increasing your conversions, which leads to increasing your bottom line, your revenue.
Well, you touch on something very important, because before people will look at bounce rates and time spent on the web page, and now the focus is shifting on conversions, because
Yeah.
naturally the traffic will diminish. So basically, you still want to look at the sales conversions, but
Mhm.
it can come not from direct website visits or how much time people spent on your website. It's from that overall universe of these systems that are working together that you just mentioned, right?
It's hard just on that last point there. That just proves out the point that Maurice has made there, that, you know, it's not just a single discipline wins the race. It never was that, but even more so now, it can't be that there. Because if search drives an increase of, say, 200 or 300% of focused traffic, but your UX is off, or your content doesn't, convey exactly, answers the question, or provides that little bit more layer of information that feeds them down into to whatever conversion funnel you have, you're just basically you're shouting into the wind. And that's where that more unified front comes, making sure that search is involved with the UX at the very start, the branding element. We had a couple of clients over there this year that came in, that we looked at their analytics and we seen that their organic was extremely strong. So we have to be very careful about how we approach different elements of changes within the site, specifically around branding and kind of how positioning is. So we don't offset that. That's one of the things that we kind of stand pretty firm on, is that we don't want to have to go and build back something that's already built. So we take a lot of time around that there, making sure that it's mapped out correctly. So whenever we do our kind of regression testing through the models that we've built, we know that we're going to stand the test of a migration or a roll up or whatever that looks like, so that we don't have to answer the questions of, we did have this traffic, now we don't have it, what's going on? And that's something that I think we're pretty proud of.
Yes. So let's talk about the tools. What are your favorite SEO tools?
Maurice, what should we do? I just call him Maurice and I say, Maurice, what do we do? What do you think?
Well, listen, I have to give a shout out to Gareth, because I learned just about everything I know about SEO from Gareth, and also how to leverage the tools that we use. And, as I was thinking about this, because we spoke about this a bit earlier, is, I'm going to talk about the tools that we use, but I also want to talk about it from the perspective from our audience on, understanding the tools that your marketing team is using to be able to provide you with information and updates and opportunities about your website, right? So, starting off with Screaming Frog. Screaming Frog is a tool that allows us to crawl the website and understand the information architecture, understanding indexing issues. I mean, we can understand a lot of different things through various integrations with Screaming Frog, such as integration with Google Analytics and Search Console, and also, OpenAI as it happens. So it's really useful for us to understand from a technical health perspective what's going on with your website, as well as understanding the complete amount of URLs you have on your website. Because one thing that I've been finding out, working with many clients is they don't really know how many pages they have on their website. It might have went through several iterations. You might have several teams publishing content. You might think you only have a set of 10 pages, but then there's all type of other pages that you might not know about. So it's very important to understand a total inventory of the content that you have that is potentially indexable. Then we also use Ahrefs for understanding your backlink profile. Gareth, do you want to talk a little bit about the benefits of why we use Ahrefs and the information that we look to convey from that tool?
Sure. I think that what we find with Ahrefs is one of the core asks that we have at Modup, which is redesign, development, and migration of pretty large and sophisticated sites. And I think that what happens is that there's a lot of focus, rightfully so, in that area, but where we typically tend to find, and Maurice just touched on it, there's other iterations of the site has happened over the years, and maybe there's been a decision made to, maybe not carry stuff across, maybe a page or a folder, or bringing different things together. But what sometimes happens is that they inadvertently cut off value from that there. So what we typically tend to use Ahrefs for is finding toxicity within the link profile, making sure that there's nothing really there that the search engine would kind of deem as being kind of, untoward, although the search engine does typically tend to overlook toxic links. But once again, we need to cross, when it comes to Google, we need to cross our T's and dot our I's. Whenever we do the migration, we typically tend to, as I say, go back down through all of the different iterations of the website that's been there to kind of get our full arms around the link profile, so that every dollar was invested over the life cycle of the company is plumbed back into it again. We do a lot of competitor research in there as well, folder-based competitor research. So if we have a company or a client that wants to kind of have a different folder within this site that demands a little bit more investment around link building, we kind of gauge their, whatever the competition have for their site on that folder. We would then recommend that that's what they should be going after, and also at the same time too, for finding kind of link opportunities. It's really in the search experience Swiss Army knife, if you want to call it that. We kind of have a very specific purpose for it, refs, and it serves it very well.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of piggyback on that, another really great tool from Ahrefs is their audit tool, right? Like here with Modop, our search experience team, we perform an audit and analysis to identify opportunities for growth in your organic visibility. And so that starts with the technical review first. And so I mentioned before, Screaming Frog allows us to identify the amount of URLs, but in conjunction with the audit tool from Ahrefs, we're also able to take a deeper look at what's going on in your technical headers. What signals are you sending the search engines in order for indexation for your pages? This is extremely important because, again, we conduct a manual audit of your website, but then we reference the tools that we're mentioning and their audit capabilities to kind of identify all of the opportunities and issues that can be resolved and overcome through strategic steps, right? So I wanted to point that out about Ahrefs. Their audit tool is really great. Another tool that we use, one of my favorites, is Semrush. Like, I love that tool right there. It does a lot of different things. Like, there's a lot of overlap between Ahrefs and Semrush. But for me, Semrush is the best keyword and market analysis tool that you could use out there by far. They've also started to release some new AI visibility tools, which we've been taking advantage of, which I think are really, really promising. You know what I mean? But their bread and butter is being able to do the keyword and topic research and content ideation and being able to understand your current ranking position and then be able to follow and track that and see if your optimizations are actually working, right? And this goes back to, being able to have a technically sound site. One time, we optimized a client site and we had optimized the site for over a year and we weren't seeing any uptick in any of the engagement metrics. And they were like, what is going on? So we took a real deep technical look and there happened to be a hidden code that was blocking indexation for a lot of their pages, where it would show up as indexed on one site, show up as indexed in Search Console, but not showing up really for any traffic or anything. So it was really weird. Once we was able to resolve that issue, boom, the traffic upticked and boom, it opened the floodgates. So it's really important to understand that you need to have a technically sound site because that affects indexation, which affects the search bots and the AI bots from crawling your site and understanding your content to then associate relevance. Because you got to remember, all of those bots are looking for patterns. And as long as your content is helpful and it resonates with the search intent of the patterns that the users are searching for, you're going to always show up on top or relevant, right? And so with Semrush, again, we use it a lot for, keyword research, topic ideation. They also have a great audit tool as well. And so we use and leverage all of those different things and their trends. The market trends report is really awesome. Another tool that we use quite often, and these are just various tools that we use within our internet browser, right? Like SEO metadata inspector, right? To be able to inspect your metadata and take a look at your schema markup and the alt text of the images for every page. Also being able to understand if there are any 301 redirects that are happening with the URLs that we're landing on. Are there any redirect chains? Are there any pages that should be redirecting to a more relevant site, right? So there's a various amount of tools. But for me, another one of my favorite tools that I like to use is Airtable because it allows me to compile all of the data that I find through any auditor analysis or any optimization and to be able to track that, create recommendations, communicate that with the clients, and then track the progress. So I really like Airtable.
The nice thing about Airtable too is that you can take all of that and put it into a presentation. It auto converts to a presentation. So while it looks like a more advanced version of Excel, you change it and it will auto do it into a presentation for you, which is extremely helpful.
Also, another tool that I've been starting to use a lot lately is our Mod brand agents. It's our internal closed version of ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude. Like, we have different models that we use to be able to upload data because it's closed. It's a closed system. It's not connected to the internet or connected to any training data. It's really our own system to be able to bounce ideas and ask different questions and just uncover any insights that we might have missed through a manual review. There's nothing wrong with using AI to be able to help you leverage the tools that you have and then be able to give that strategy to the AI on what you're looking to accomplish, right? And then verify those responses. Like, verification is important. Details. That's all what Gareth talks about is it's all about the details, the data. What is the data telling us? You know what I mean? Follow the data. So verification is important. So not relying wholly on AI tools to be able to write your content or tell you what's going on, but to validate through extensive analysis of what's going on with your digital system, right?
And I wanted to follow up, Gareth. When you mentioned toxic links, what did you mean by toxic links?
Well, this morning I came into work and on another level, I went to, I can't remember what I did. I think I tried to unsubscribe, but inadvertently, I opened a spam bot that just started to spam my inbox with tens of thousands of emails. That was one level of spam. Whenever it comes to spam for a site, traditionally what it is just very low quality backlinks, very low quality citations that are clearly there for manipulation of search engine results. They're there for private blog networks or different farms kind of pump out these backlinks. A lot of the time too is it can be used for negative SEO. So if a competitor, if you're trying to get to a specific position and you're doing the thing right, what typically tends to happen is that competitors can sometimes use unscrupulous methods, and that can be toxic backlinks. A lot of links with the same anchor text, a lot of links with from different PBNs, different things that really go against Google Webmaster Guidelines. So we kind of gauge that on kind of a mix of manual and automation. If we just see that the number is below 10 and we click on the site and it's a clear directory and it's just been rolled up for links alone, we would add that there, so we would to the list. As I say, Google does typically tend to overlook a lot of these here because the disavow file that they've got, disavow feature that they have in Webmaster Guidelines, once you cut it away, it's cut away. So if you don't know how to use the tool, you can do a lot of damage. At the same time too, we like to do things manually as well. So every single link that we find that doesn't hit kind of the metrics that we would seem as acceptable, that would be classified as a toxic link.
And what are your thoughts on link shorteners? So there's Bitly, or even obviously LinkedIn shortens long links and LinkedIn posts, but then you can also hide potentially dangerous links as a shorter link. Have you encountered any, and I'm sure there are some best practices. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Is that URL structure or links?
So I guess what I'm referring to, it would be a URL, but it would be hidden as a text, basically description where they may have.
It's like eating cardboard. It has no good. It doesn't do anything. The search engines are more advanced. You have to remember that Google and Bing and the other search engines their entire business model is to land an end user on the most relevant result subject to the query that was typed in, and they want to get it to the most trusted. So whenever Maurice was talking about kind of the things that's important within SEO, the structure and how things happen on that page need to be exactly what the search engine's asking for. And there's a lot of other signals that kind of dictate that too, like off-page signals that we were talking about. But then kind of things like URL shorteners, they're there, they serve a purpose, legitimate purpose. If you're trying to get into, as I say, unscrupulous things, the search engine can weed that out in a second.
Yeah, like for example, using URL shorteners that will then redirect to a correct URL path on your website, that's completely okay. Using URL shorteners for deceptive practices, for example, redirecting to a, copy domain that looks like your website, but it's really spam. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
one instance I could think of, but just using one in general, as long as that URL, once it goes to the final destination, is your website, then that shouldn't be a problem, right?
It's an old-fashioned cloaking tactic in the search engine. We did that out 10, 15 years ago. But what I do find is that as the search engine updates their algorithm and kind of updates Webmaster Guidelines about things that they accept and what they don't accept, what I find is that over a period of time, they come back and try it again. They come back and see, does it work? Was it updated? Was it really updated? They soon find out that a lot of the things that they think of Google doesn't forget. It doesn't reverse things. It puts things in motion and it updates it and it goes along. And that what you're referring to there, Maurice, there is a cloak. Very, very well-known car brand from Germany hired an agency that I think it was 2007, embarked on that tactic. And they created hundreds of thousands of different doorway pages where somebody would click the link and it would just read something normal, what you would think, but it would then redirect to a doorway page that then would go to the other place, to another page. And the search engine says that's cloaking. You're not landing the end user on the end destination.
Exactly.
And for that, they got de-indexed. The car brand themselves got, and everybody knows them because they're very popular on the road, but they got de-indexed until somebody contacted them. It actually fared out a court case around that there where the agency was taken to court because they had blatantly went against it. So don't get involved in cloaking anybody.
That's really good advice. So my last question for today is, when we talked about AI generated content, I think in the context of the website, we probably talked mostly about text, but I'm sure, obviously, we can also talk about images. So how does it impact search? Maybe you have, especially with Nano Banana, and of course, so many people are experimenting with creating images and videos with Sora AI, and it's so new and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you also think there will be either penalty or some sort of a difference? What are your thoughts in general on how original content, visual content created by artists, photography and videography versus AI generated? Is it treated differently? And are the websites with original graphics treated better versus AI generated graphics?
I think it goes back then through to ownership, to authorship, and that leads through. It's not just images; it's the full gamut of kind of everything, your digital footprint that you have out there. There needs to be that connection. You can't just roll up an author and not have it connected to a Gmail or to a profile and just do nothing with it. You have to show that there's a real person there interacting with some level of that footprint. And I think that with AI generated assets outside of text or code roll up, I still think that right now, to the trained eye, you can see that it's still AI. I find it funny sometimes whenever you go onto maybe the likes of Facebook, and there's one that's a video in slow motion and it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And everybody's commenting on how the bull rider got kicked off or whatever it is. And I just like, AI is getting dangerous because you can, if you, to the trained eye, you can see that it's not a real video. But I think once again too, the search engines and the AI, they're going to be able to either root that out, or they're just going to not be able to, they're not going to give you the value that you think you're going to get from it. I think if you produce a really good video of, say, Marlin, and it's lifelike, I think that's for the audience. That taps into the brand, to the visual aspect of it, which is very important. But if you think that that's going to rank number one in image search, is not. If we just go back to the periodic table, right now, ModUp, they rank in number 5th position for the periodic table whenever you go and search geo periodic table. That's because there was time and attention and there's real data behind that to be able to kind of push ourselves out there and say that, this is, and it's also Google maybe tipping their hat to us to say, okay, you guys are, you kind of know the different pieces that's out there, and we're kind of rewarding, because Google's all about rewarding. If it's an AI generative, if I went on to ChatGPT right now and asked, give me a periodic table, and was to load that into ModUp's page and write a blog about it, which was all AI, it wouldn't do anything. It would just languish and just take up crawl space on the site. But because there's real research, there's real thought process behind it, and it's a topic that there's a lot of buzz around geo. There's a lot of buzz around geo right now. The search engine's they're not going to reward somebody that's just a very low, not going to reward an asset that's a very low quality asset. They want essence and they need authority behind it, and that's what we give them.
And I'm always going to take it back to the basics, right? Like for website design best practices, authenticity, using original images or images that are relevant to your product or services, making sure that the alt text for that image describes what that image is, making sure the video is warmed up with video, schema to describe what that video content is. But then again, it just all goes back to, is this image or content helpful in the whole overall scheme of your on-page optimization? Is it relevant? That's what determines whether you're going to rank higher or not. You know what I mean? Not if it's AI generated or human generated. If it's duplicative images, the AI is going to rank, which it feels is more relevant, right? So having authentic, original imagery, original video, whether it's human created or AI created, that's the key. Is this content or imagery related to your product or service? Is it related to your brand messages? Is it helping answer a question that your potential clients have and they need to use your product or services to resolve that matter, right? So that's where it comes back in. So again, I always go back to the basics. Make sure your alt text is there on your images. Make sure the image file name makes sense. Make sure your video has schema markup for that video, and it's, clicking out to your YouTube or Vimeo profile, right? You know what I mean? That ecosystem, building on that ecosystem, that's what raises your rank, not just
Optimize your
AI
dam.
generated or human generated. And again, the search engine doesn't like AI slop. That's really what the point of our conversation is. You can use AI to help you with your strategy, but if you just depending on AI, you're not going to get the results you're looking for.
Yeah.
These are very good words. And it just sparked one last follow-up question about hashtags, because I hear different answers. Some people, some experts are saying that, for example, when you mention hashtags on your YouTube videos or social media posts, that they're useless in the sense that YouTube already crawls all your content and this is kind of old day and you don't need to do that. Others are saying, no, absolutely not. You should provide hashtags. Do you have a point of view on hashtags?
Yes, I think it doesn't do any harm. Once again, Google give you just enough information to make you move in a direction, and I think that because there's a lot of people out there that have YouTube channels that are all around the legalistic side of it, I still think it doesn't hurt. There's a lot of things out there that the search engine says not to do. It might help you, it might not help you, and it's kind of in the middle of whether you do it or not. I do know that hashtags do serve a purpose. They are almost like it depends on the platform itself. If they kind of got a kind of a hose pipe to different, like Twitter had it for Google, they had the hose pipe. I think that it can kind of cross pollinate with different platforms. So I don't think it can harm. It can do any harm.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that again, coming back to the basics, relevance, right? Tagging your content. I mean, for example, with YouTube, hashtags can almost be seen like terms that you want your content to be known for, right? So if you are in this, I don't think the days of Soldier Boy going and tagging all of his content as Beyonce and driving up his, views works anymore. You want to make sure your content is relevant, right? Make sure those hashtags is relevant to your content, to the terms that are within that content that are helpful for the people that are searching or who might search for your content, your audience. So again, I wouldn't depend on any one thing as the end all be all for increased search visibility. I would start to think of this more as a team type of thing where all of your different marketing partners are working in conjunction with each other to achieve your visibility goals, right? Because it's no longer one side is leading the other. Everybody has to work together. And if your team doesn't understand that, guess what? Your visibility won't understand that either.
It's almost like there's a lot of schools of thought out there where it's like saying that the sum total of the U.S. military is Delta Force because them guys are kind of the tip of the spear. But at the end of the day, you need Delta Force to do a very, very specific thing. But you're not going to win the war with that. You need the Air Force, you need the Navy, you need the Marines, you need the logistics, you need everybody to win the war. And what AI is, I don't want to say forcing is a more of a 360, not just in your tickets moving across different departments and that, but a real family kind of a viewport where we're looking at kind of a client comes in and says, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to achieve, and you own that business like it's your own, and everybody comes together, and it's all about impact for us. There's no, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Great
just gonna
words.
say, I was just gonna say too, I don't wanna cut everybody off, but I think Gareth, you agree here as well. It's about having that relevant traffic that drives impact that leads to conversions, right? Because we've been talking about ranking and AI visibility. you know, People can get you to rank higher in visibility, but is that relevant traffic that's then leading into a conversion, leading into increased revenue, leading into a new hire, leading into a new subscription, right? That's really what it's all about, having that relevant impact. And I think that's what Gareth was just saying there.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. That was a great interview, and I definitely learned a few new things today. Thank you, thank you.
No worries.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
See ya.